Well, hello there, Latifah Faisal. How you doing, little fella? Before we get to the main event, which will be something from Larry Elder's program on January 4th, yesterday, about a black police officer inadvertently attempting to shoot a black woman and accidentally hitting a bystander. Before we get to that, because this will be... I'll correlate all this. I'll put all this together. Latifah Faisal was quick to say something about George Floyd and the verdict there. But I've got a video up. You can find my Rumble channel. I asked her why she didn't say anything about Kyle Rittenhouse. I think part of it's that she's a lemming and the antique. She's not very bright, and the antique media shapes and whatever, is like the flavor of the month. She jumps in with everybody else and starts running her mouth on it. So I think that's why she commented on George Floyd. But she's aware of Kyle Rittenhouse, but that was a different animal because it was a white guy. And ironically, the people that Kyle Rittenhouse shot and had altercations with were white trash. But there was a lot of black people going around Kenosha as well. And white trash burning the place down. And Kyle Rittenhouse, being a white guy, wasn't going to put up with that, put himself in a dangerous situation. But I asked her why she didn't say anything about that. It was kind of odd. But she had a post on her channel. Let me add this first, too. I asked her about lockdowns. I'll mesh all this together. I asked her about whether she favored lockdowns in Iowa a couple months before the 2020 election. She didn't answer me. A, because I would have embarrassed her on this if we talked about it. And B, she's in favor of lockdowns, and it's not really popular in Iowa. And why do I mention that? Because she's had several posts up. I did save one where she praises the police, and I think she wanted to get in front of this because that's not popular in Iowa. And she's frolicked with Black Lives Matter. I also asked her. They're big. Black Lives Matter. You watch those videos on their site about defunding the police. They want to eventually try to abolish prisons. And what you'd have to do is you'd have to completely abolish sin and evil people. And I will also mention, if you're a nonviolent drug offender, you shouldn't be thrown in prison, no matter the color of your skin. I should also mention, as I've mentioned many times before, the biggest threat to a young black man in Chicago, Baltimore, and Detroit is not the police, not the KKK, not a redneck militia, but other young black males. So I think she tried to get out in front of this and praise law enforcement because defund the police isn't popular in Iowa. If it was, she'd be all for it. She's waiting for that to become popular. So she tried to get out in front of this, just like she's in favor of lockdowns and all that crap, but she's not going to crow about it too much, and she's certainly not going to debate it in a forum where she has to, where she can't hide behind a 3-sentence response on Facebook. So I think that's the reason she said it, to get away from it, because Black Lives Matter they eventually want to get rid of prisons. They want to get rid of the police. Of course, they don't have much. I watched those 3 dumb videos they've got. I'll debunk those at some point. By the way, I'm doing this without a script. I'm just shooting from the hip just to see how well I can do. I'm not like Latifah Faisal, where I'm a drone with a script and everything I have is polished. Everything in front of me. So they want to get rid of the police eventually. And Latifah Faisal is praising the police to try to distance herself from. Now, she might say, well, you voted for Donald Trump in 2020, and I did. I didn't vote for him in 2016, but I did vote for him in 2020. You don't agree with everything he says. True. But defunding the police, getting rid of the police, which is eventually getting rid of prisons? Do you want... It seems to me from watching those 3 episodes on their website, they don't want mentally ill people in jails. Now, there's some I remember a video of a guy in Portland who was obviously a drug-addled, crazed lunatic with a trash can lid. You don't want that person locked up? Some areas you try that and you won't have to wait for the police because a concealed carrier will probably take care of it if they're attacked, like Kyle Rittenhouse. So, what else did I want to mention? Oh, I needed to mention this too, Latifah Faisal. I had to do a whole lot of digging to find this because there's a lot of redneck podunk counties all over the U.S., and if there's an altercation with police and it doesn't make the national news, it's hard to find. And plus, people getting killed in altercations with the police is actually very rare. If you go down to all the calls police get in a day for anything, domestic disturbance, pulling a guy over for speeding and he's not cooperating or whatever, what percentage of it results in a fatality, no matter whose fault it is? Very, very, very rare. But I found Latifah Faisal, and I'm not going to name any of these for anybody, and I'm not going to put any links up. I'm going to see if she says anything about this, because eventually she's going to answer this one way or another. I found 2 instances, Latifah Faisal, in Story County, Iowa. I made sure it was in the confines of Story County. 2 people in altercations with the police that were killed. I didn't say murdered. I said killed. 2 altercations where the suspect that the police were trying to apprehend or deal with, were killed. And there was another one where a person was seriously injured and the police lost a civil lawsuit. Now, why didn't you say anything about that? I'm wondering, why don't you crow about that? Oh, because it wasn't national news. I suppose that's why. And you don't want to rock. You know, you'll be in your little ivory tower safe down in 90+% rural white Iowa. Or I guess Story County's not rural per se. Most of Iowa is rural, but Story County is densely populated enough. I suppose it would not be considered rural, but you can crow about what's going on up there in Minneapolis because people aren't walking around Story County throwing Molotov cocktails through windows. But it's happening in Minneapolis. Also, I'll leave a link to my 2 videos I did debunking her on the insurrection, because she made a comment about that, and I totally debunked that in 2 different videos. And she made a comment about what the police did, how they dealt with people marching for social justice. Those people in Minneapolis weren't marching for social justice. They were burning hundreds of buildings down. They did it it's happened in Portland more than once. They tried to burn a courthouse down in Nashville. But you're in your little safe, little 90+% white Iowa County. And they're not marching down your street, setting cars on fire and doing that. And again, a lot of these cities too, especially up in the Twin Cities. You remember the homicide data I went over? The homicide rate in Minnesota outside of Twin Cities and Minneapolis. And guess what happens? Guess what a very common theme in homicide is in Minnesota? It's a black person killing another black person. Not the police. Again, the most dangerous adversary to a young black man in the Twin Cities is not the police, not the KKK, not some redneck militia. It's another young black man. Same thing in Chicago. But I urge you to watch those 3 videos by Black Lives Matter. And Latifah Faisal, comment on those 3 things in Story County that I found. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I'm sure you have to know about them. You have to. I mean, it took me a lot of digging, because it's not like there's articles up in the New York Times about altercations with the police in Podunkville, Iowa. So comment on that. Why didn't you say 2 people were killed in altercations with the police and another one was seriously injured? It doesn't happen often, but those are 3 cases. So now what I'd like to get to is and I'll leave all the links to all that stuff I'm talking about underneath in the video description. Now what we're going to get to is a thing Larry Elder did yesterday on his show, and I don't think Latifah Faisal, I did check her pages just before I did this to see if she said anything about it. A black police chief in Arkansas was responding to a black woman. This is Little Rock, Arkansas, responding to a black woman, a lunatic who was firing a gun into a crowd, and he tried to assist in the situation and tried to apprehend the shooter, and he accidentally shot someone else. Now, if it was a white cop and a black woman, guess what? It'd probably be national news. But it's not going to be because, well, it was a black cop. So take it away, Mr. Elder. And I hope I did well shooting from the hip, because I'm getting tired of using a script, and I figure if you don't use a script and you're not a drone like some people who have a prepackaged commentary and focus group commentary, you learn it a lot better. So go ahead, Mr. Elder. The floor is yours, sir.
How many times do we have to do this? This is interesting. A Little Rock chief of police who said there needs to be all hands on deck, so he literally patrolled the streets himself, accidentally shot and killed a suspect, actually shot and killed a victim when trying to shoot at a suspect who was firing on a crowd. Now, it turns out the Little Rock police chief is black. The victim he accidentally shot is a black female. And the suspect he was trying to shoot, who was shooting at other people, is a black female. Little Rock, Arkansas. So I was curious to see whether or not the media was going to hyperventilate over this. And I knew they wouldn't because it's inconvenient. The shooter, black police chief. The suspect, black female, shooting at a crowd. And the person accidentally shot and killed was a black female. So if you're CNN, if you're Don Lemon, if you're well, Chris Cuomo is probably at home trading Bitcoin. But if you're CNN, MSNBC, hee haw, if you're the New York Times, if you're Joy Reid, if you're the View, Sonny Hoskins, what do you do with that? I'm not happy that an innocent person was shot and killed, but it does show you this happens. The villain here, of course, is the suspect who was shooting into a crowd. So the newspapers, the media, I watch a lot of CNN and MSNBC, so you don't have to. Virtually nothing on this.